Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Eric Porfelli, Chair of the Department of Human Sciences at Ohio State University, and I'm going to be moderating this session. And this session is devoted to medical school admissions, busting common myths. So during this session, we're going to orient you to the notions of getting in versus choosing a medical school. We're going to review how medical schools use holistic review by defining priority experiences, attributes, and metrics based on their mission. We're then going to talk about how applicants are advantaged when they align their why with the mission of a medical school. And then we're going to transition into our panelists engaging with us in busting some common myths. From there, we'll take some questions and provide some responses, and we'll do a summary and wrap up. As we go through this content, please feel free to post your questions or your comments in the Q&A section of Zoom. And when we come to the appropriate junctures, we will certainly do our best to address all, if not most, of the questions that are posed. We might have several hundred people on this call, so we're hoping that among you, you'll provide some degree of questions and comments to help facilitate the conversation. Now, for those of you who attended a previous session before lunch, you'll see that some of the content at the beginning of the session is very similar, but the latter part of this session will be distinctly different than the one you will have attended in the morning. So in terms of the notions of getting in versus choosing, many prospective applicants are considering or thinking about going to medical school, and their first aim is to get in somewhere. And we can understand why that is. It's practical. Applicants want to become physicians, and the way you become a physician is by being admitted, getting in to some medical school. But we're here to suggest that you should think of it as a different goal, and the goal is around choosing. In simple terms, the first decision of the medical school admissions process is made by applicants. They decide where to apply. The second decision is made by admissions committees. They decide who to interview. They decide ultimately who to offer seats to. But the last decision is made by applicants. They decide to accept offers or they don't. And believe it or not, there are many applicants who are blessed with multiple offers. Said differently, the first and last decision of all admissions processes are made by you, the applicant. And so you are making choices in this process clearly. Even if you're only granted, say, one admission, one seat offer, you will choose to accept it or not. And we're here to suggest that these choices that you will make, these choices around where you apply, and these choices around which seat offers you choose or not, will be vital for not only the years of medical education, but the years of residency and beyond. So we're here to suggest consider the notion of choosing as you're endeavoring to try to get in or be admitted. In terms of how medical school admissions consider applicants, they use this model generally of experiences, attributes, and metrics. Metrics are the things we often think about frequently when we think about getting in. It's grades and test scores. And we think, oh my goodness, we have to get perfect grades and test scores in order to get into medical school and be admitted. And that is not true. Fundamentally, you have to have good grades and test scores, but certainly not perfect. And many, if not almost all students get admitted with imperfect grades and test scores in one form or another. So that's what metrics are about. Attributes are those characteristics that reflect you and your background. And they're shaded in pink in the graphic to the right. It's your interests, your values, your beliefs, your demographic characteristics, your experiences as they amount to things like leadership and intellectual curiosity and research. It's these characteristics that reflect you that potentiate your success in medical school and beyond, and particularly as it relates to the medical school mission. The experiences are those manifest things that you do every day that amount to your attributes or reflect your attributes. And there are things like life experiences, your educational attainment, your research experience, your affiliations. So those are the things that you do every day that demonstrate or reflect some of the attributes that you also are trying to reflect in your admissions packet. So therefore, what happens is that medical school admissions committees add up all of 3 areas of experiences, attributes, and metrics in a holistic way in evaluating each and every candidate. And that is how admissions committees make their decisions around interview offers and ultimately seat offers. In terms of the medical school mission, hopefully you've heard a lot about this. If not, it's something you really want to immerse yourself in. But that mission is vital to the medical school. It guides everything from who they try to recruit, the characteristics they seek and who they admit, the characteristics and the nature of their curriculum and their curricular and extracurricular experiences that they offer to their students, all the way through to how that articulates with residency and the kinds of residencies that the students pursue and are successful in, and ultimately how they practice and where they practice medicine. So it impacts all aspects of medical education, and it certainly impacts the admissions and recruitment process. So medical schools will create recruitment programs of various forms, and they will articulate an entire admissions process in a way that revolves around the mission of the medical school. And as you see there on the slide, the bullets reflect that. I did see that someone asked the question if these slides will be made available after the session. Laura, can you respond to that question for me? If not, we'll
Yes, the presentation is being recorded and it will be available approximately 24 hours after the live showing. So approximately 3 p.m. tomorrow inside the virtual fair platform in the auditorium, and will also be available for 30 days moving forward.
Thank you. So for those of you who have been furiously taking notes, feel free to do so. But the good news is you'll have this content after this presentation, as Laura suggested. So the next thing we'd like to reflect on is we've understood now that the medical schools have this mission. It guides the experiences, attributes, and metrics that they seek in applicants. It guides ultimately the interview offers they make. It guides the seat offers they make. It's a guidepost for all things recruitment and admissions. But then there's another guidepost to consider, which is your personal guidepost. We refer to it as your why. The why of why you wish to pursue a career in medicine. What is it about your story that adds up to being a particular kind of physician serving within a particular specialty and a particular population of people? What is it about you that amounts to that? Certainly for many people, it's about, quote, helping people. But with medical school admissions, we're looking for you to go deeper, to have a deeper sense of who you are and how more specifically that articulates in your ideas around a career in medicine. And in terms of what the reflection of the why might be, it could be, for example, what type of patient populations would you like to serve? Who would you like to have as your peers in medical education and why? What do you hope to gain from them? What do you hope to contribute to them? What kind of support services will help you be most successful and why as you're in medical education? How do you learn best? And what type of curriculum is most suiting to you? More generally, what issues are important to you and how would you see yourself in those issues, and how would those issues affect the kind of medicine you ultimately practice? And then, another question you might ask is, thinking about the cohorts of students that are admitted by a particular medical school, in general, do those cohorts seem to reflect the kind of career you wish to have? So these are the kinds of questions that we encourage you to think about as you're trying to understand your why, and then you're trying to articulate that within your application materials, as well as if you receive an interview, how you would articulate it in person or over Zoom, depending on the nature of the interview, with another person who's trying to understand your why. This aspect of your why helps you to make choices around the kinds of medical schools you apply to. And the idea is to relate the story of you to the story of the mission of each medical school, and you're benefited by applying to medical schools where their mission really seems as if it was written for your why. whatever that why is for you. So in the end, you can think of it as kind of like two puzzle pieces. One puzzle piece is a medical school. Another puzzle piece is you and everything that amounts to you. And as a chooser, your job is to try to choose those medical school puzzle pieces that you think best fit you, the whole of you. The job of the admissions committee is to do basically the same thing in reverse. They're trying to relate their puzzle piece to all the puzzle pieces of the applicants that have submitted applications, and they're trying to find a good fit too. So it is a matchmaking process on some level. And both the medical school and each applicant is a powerful decision maker in that process. And for this session, we're trying to make, to the extent possible, opportunities for you to become a better, more powerful decision maker in this process, because you are one. So that said, as a part of that goal of empowering you to be a great decision maker, as admissions leaders on this call and people that helped advise us, we know that there's a lot of myths out there. And these myths cause some of the applicants who are making decisions to make decisions that are ill-informed. They're informed by myths that actually aren't a reflection truly of reality. And so what we're trying to do is bust some of these very common myths so that you aren't misguided by them, that you are better informed so that you can make the best possible choices for you relative to the kind of career you wish to have in medicine. And I will tell you that as a former admissions dean myself, I'm sure the other admissions deans on the call will attest to this. We've had countless conversations with people who were actively, applicants who were actively making decisions or had already made decisions based on myths that led them down paths that we would not have advised them to pursue. So that said, we're now going to introduce our panelists. We have two panelists today. I'll turn it over first to Glenn to introduce himself. Dr. Fogarty.
Hello, my friends. Yes, so Glenn Fogarty, and lucky enough to support the efforts at the University of Arizona College of Medicine, Phoenix. And Dr. Fogarty, great opening as we started talking about this environment, about the myths, because what we really focused on right there is really each of the stories, I think, that each of these medical schools want to tell you, as in where you got to have the power to be the one to choose, a great way for us to kind of set the stage for us. So yes, yeah, you can learn about medical schools in so many different ways. You could go to the you could go to their websites, and then where do you go? Whenever I'm talking to candidates, I actually do bring up that every medical school has a story, and you have to find the ones that are the right fit for you. So where do you start? You know, for us, you know, I called it our driving forces, but our mission statement, our core pillars, our diversity statement. In there, I almost think you have a roadmap to kind of start walking down and seeing if this is the type of school, the type of environment, the type of community that you want to be a part of. And every one of these websites give you tons of hints of what we will be looking for as we are making those selections and those choices when it comes to the admissions committee or who we invite to interview, just any stage. You know, if you see our medical or for our mission statement, I named a couple keywords. You know, we are, you know, looking for physicians. We are looking for science. We have an MD, PhD program as well. But we're also looking for leaders. So there's a little hint right there in the mission statement that leadership qualities might be something that we're seeking out here. And thank you, we do. You get to the core pillars, it might be a roadmap for you right there when you get to your secondary, what you want to focus on. For us, we want to hear about your education. You want to see your research. You want to understand your clinical background. We want to see how you're involved in a community. And then I think everybody, I think we're all trying to find and build classes that are a reflection of our community. You know, we got a lot of strong words in there, but I put two in focus: inclusive excellence. And I think as you're going through and looking at medical schools and you're applying to medical schools, I think most of them are going to ask about diversity. They're going to ask about inclusive excellence. And it might be a hint for you too, how you answer a question. Maybe in the secondary, you know, we ask our question, we're going to talk about inclusive excellence, then reply back to us in those same kind of terms. Again, start to get to know us, try and put that connection point of, you know, what you're thinking and who we are. And so we could see that kind of match. So as we go through this next hour, as we spend time together, start thinking about, I love how we set up the whys, why medicine, why this medical school, because I guarantee you we'll be asking, and we're going to be looking for those fits. I mean, what is it? 50,000 applications, 20,000 seats. So 2 out of 5 get in, at that each year. We'll talk about drive, determination, and grit, I'm sure within this hour. But to start, trying to put that best foot forward. I think roadmaps are out there, and through a mission statement, through the website, I think it's a great place to start. So look forward to working with you guys over this next hour, and glad to say hello.
Thank you, Dr. Fogarty. And now I'll turn it over to Ms. Jukes.
Thank you. So as you can see, I'm the Director of Medical Student Admissions at the Larner College of Medicine at the University of Vermont College. And our mission statement is similar but different, as you can see. And of course, we want to also educate a diverse population of physicians and biomedical scientists. And the part that I've chosen to highlight today is to engage with our communities to benefit Vermont and the world. And one of the parts of our curriculum that everybody takes part in is a public service research project at the end of your first year. And so obviously we want people who are going to be interested in that kind of research, interested in serving their communities in public health. It is a project that benefits Vermont organizations in our community in Vermont, but then we also have a global health program as well. So we're looking to expand that. So we're not just educating physicians that are going to serve Vermont, but also physicians that are going to serve the world. And how are you going to do that? And so when we're looking for these things in your application, there's lots of different places we see these indications. We see them in your personal statement, we see them in the experiences and how you describe them. That's a really important part, is how you reflect on what you've done already. And also in the questions, again, as Dr. Fogarty was saying, on the secondary application, we're going to ask you questions that are important to us. And so if those questions resonate with you, it might be a good indication that we're a good fit for you.
Is there anything you'd like to add from here, Ms. Jukes?
And also, when we meet you on interview day, we're going to look for those qualities as well.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank
These
you.
are our panelists. We're now going to transition into some common myths. I also see that we have a wonderful array of comments and questions that we will get to thereafter. You'll see that for some of these myths, we have assigned a panelist, and for others, we've kept it open, particularly the ones at the end. And so either any of us can respond to those as we see fit. So we'll start with the first myth, which is you have to be a pre-med or science major to get into medical school. Dr. Fogarty.
Yeah, I'll tackle this one. But I love our representation as well, because we got the East Coast, we got the Midwest, we got the West covered. And what you guys just saw, all three of us just said hello, and you heard the same stories, I think, in different facets. And I think that's fabulous for you guys as you're walking this path to medicine, because I think we all are kind of focused on the same end goals. And when I say all of us, it is also you, the candidate, the future student, these medical schools, these communities. I think we all have this driving force that's kind of walking us towards. So for us to bust some of these myths, I think it'll certainly help. And yeah, the pre-med science major to get into medical school, we actually celebrate when we have people not from the sciences applying to our medical school. Diversity is defined in so many ways, and it comes also from just the major that you choose. So if you have a passion in undergrad, seek that out. Do your homework, understand what these colleges, medical schools will need course-wise, because we all do require some basic courses. But if you have a passion, go out there and seek it. It'll be a part of your story, which is just absolutely fantastic. I did a quick little homework on our medical school. In this past year, a third of our medical school, our applicants, came from the non-sciences major. What was interesting from that, though, those invited to interview was a third, and then of our total pool, and those that were offered admissions was a third. So all I'm really saying there is not, don't be thinking 2/3 came from the sciences. Think that that pool that came to us was strong all the way through. We kept seeing them. We kept thinking they brought great value to us. And so for us, it's starting to be your story. And it might be a story that's a little bit different. And again, no imposter syndrome we need out there. We want you to be able to tell your own story. So if this is a major that you have interest, I mean, seek it out. I know one of our students, I recruited her this year. She was an anthropology/Chinese language major, no science degree, anywhere in note. She got the courses done, but then now she's part of our medical school leadership team. I mean, she's doing absolutely fantastic for us in student government. So again, the varied part, absolutely fine. Have confidence in yourself. Seek out what you want to seek during those years in undergrad. And I guarantee you, we can still find you here in medical school.
Thank you very much. Carrie, would you like to comment at all on that particular one, or should we transition to the next one?
Sure. I think it's interesting that our classes are also about 1/3 non-science majors as well. So interesting how that goes.
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and transition. So the next one is a high MCAT score will make up for my low GPA, or vice versa.
So I think it's important to think about what we're looking for when we look at people's grades and MCATs. We're looking to make sure that the candidate is capable of handling the rigors of medical school. It's hard work. That's not to say that somebody who has a lower GPA can't be successful, but a GPA predicts how you're going to do in your courses, and MCAT predicts how you're going to do on standardized tests, both of which you have to be able to do during medical school. So we want to look at it in context. So if you have a very high MCAT score and your GPA is very low, we're going to need to go deeper. We're going to need to find out what is behind that lower GPA. Is this all in the sciences? Is it in the other courses? What's the background? What happened? Was it a hardship that somebody went through that caused that? Did the person then go on to get a master's degree or a post-bac to sort of prove that they can do the science work? Likewise, if we see great grades and then somebody just doesn't do that well in standardized tests, we're going to try to figure that out as well. So it's important to understand that we're going to look at all those different parts. We're going to try to look at them in context and understand the why behind it, and just make sure that we're confident that the person can handle the curriculum in medical school.
So I'm going to now riff off of one of the comments in the Q&A from the attendees, because this one is somewhat related. I'll read it. It says, how do we stay encouraged when tackling parts of this application process, such as dealing with the MCAT, and how many attempts is too many? How important are the scores with the holistic approach? The MCAT feels like my major struggle with being acknowledged by schools, and it is sometimes demeaning, especially when my mentors have always told me that a score does not determine a great doctor or even a great student.
I mean, it's very true.
Or?
Go ahead.
So I'm just saying, no, Dr. Profella, do you want to start right there? Do you have a thought?
I do have a thought. Thank you. Firstly, a score does not define a person. It is a reflection of one aspect of a person. And when I see an applicant who's taking the MCAT over and over and over again many times, my heart actually goes out to that person, because I get a sense that they are overburdened by this thing called the MCAT score. But I also know there are practical implications, which is there are certain scores by which it becomes so low that it becomes a concern. The challenge is that there's no hard and fast cutoff, and it is a variety of factors, which I respect and recognize is hard for applicants to digest, because they're goal-oriented folks. They're trying to achieve certain goals in this process. So my first reaction is to say that if I see a student taking the MCAT over and over again, that there's probably undue pressure being placed on that applicant in some way. And if the applicant were to reach out to me, I would probably have a conversation about the nature of that pressure and how that translates into the work they're doing.
Yeah, I think that's well said too, because not everybody has the same access or opportunities to those tools to try and get that education and get that, the preparation they need to take that exam. I do see the outside pressures, being able, like you just said, to try and get those advisors that can help them walk through that path. We've had people admitted to our medical school with multiple MCAT attempts. We measure in our, I don't want to get behind our process too much, but we measure in our admissions committee drive, determination, grit. We call it the grit factor. And thank you, a multiple time test taker can, show well in that sense. I think mostly in MCAT, and I'll have this next question we have posted up here. I'll jump into a little more. But I like I said, the MCAT is just one part of this application process. I think it's enough for us to say you don't have to worry about getting through medical school, because we could see you could get through this. Medical school is some standardized tests, and so you got not if you finish the MCAT, you have some other ones that you have to consider. But then there's also most of these medical schools have learning specialist people to help you get through those next steps. So it's getting in that front door, but then hopefully we have the resources to help you get through those next steps as well. Carrie, did you want to add anything too?
No, I really agree with what you said. Yeah, we want to be able to help you get through those. And we do recognize that people have different opportunities for resources. And it certainly isn't looked at negatively that somebody might have had multiple MCAT attempts.
All right, we'll transition then to the next myth, which is, oh, sorry, I keep clicking that button and I shouldn't do that. My application is all about my grades and MCAT score. I don't need to worry too much about the essay or secondary questions.
I like that person's confidence. But yes, we'll bust that one for sure. We spent time talking about it, the holistic review process, metrics. Yes, when I was going to speak to it before that other question, yes, we want to know you're going to be successful academically. I think that's what an MCAT could help us determine. But in an application, we are all trying to determine everyone's path, everyone's journey, and it is different. And so I think we are, hopefully humbly stated, we're all strong and to be able to see that journey. And so I don't have that same access to community help, to clinics, to education, to support. That score might be a little bit down. That's okay. But we want to make sure you're successful. The experiences, our learning specialists have told us the students that are able to balance it all in undergrad are the ones that are able to balance it all in medical school. So we do look for those people that know how to balance it all, but how you define balance it all is quite different. For us, we spend the majority of the time looking at the attributes. That's our culture, that's our secret sauce. Like I said, everybody's got enough applications, so you really can get down to finding the people that are the right fit for you, and you are the right fit for us. So that's where we're spending most of our time. So how do we figure that out? Really, it can start with the essay. I read the essay personal statement first is the first thing I go, because I get to understand that person. I learn the why medicine. I learn that story behind them. It's a really quick snapshot of who they are. I could scan those other things really quick, but this is the first deep dive. And for me, and as you go through this process, the one thing I love always reading about in a personal statement is that human connection. I have been fortunate enough to work in MBA admissions. Thank you. Those kids want to take over the world. I've done law school admissions. Those guys really want to take over the world. I've been here over 6 years. You guys, you're driven, but you have this calling to serve. And that's where I love to see it inside this personal statement, that little connection point. And I think it really helps us define who you are, helps us see, the culture. We also see it in the secondary essays as well. That's where you could really start connecting in. And like I said, understand the website and tie in to the medical school on how you are the right fit and we are the right fit for you. So looking for those connection points. So it is not all about grades. It's not about MCAT. I really do believe we go through this holistic review process, and it is trying to show yourself in so many different assets. So with that, Dr. Porfelli, Carrie, you guys want to add anything else to that thought?
Carrie?
Sure. I mean, I think that the essay is the one place where you can be you and show us the inside you and show us your story. That's the part that is like the most personal and the part where you can differentiate yourself. I mean, a lot of people have the same kinds of activities that they've done, but it's that personal statement where you are personal, where we learn about you, that I think it's really, really important. And sort of gives us that insight into the why you want to be a physician and what it is that brings you to this.
Thank you. One of the questions I'm seeing in the Q&A that relates somewhat to this, and is a very common and powerful question that is asked is, how do attributes influence my application? And the person goes on to ask, why does my race, ethnicity, or language is spoken affect if I'm accepted to a medical school? And I'll start by saying that the role of a medical school is to advance its mission. And not all, but many missions speak to the nature of the medicine and the communities that they aim to serve. And the research in this area demonstrates, for example, that when the background of the physician is more aligned with the background of the patient, health outcomes are better. I think it's fair to say that all medical school missions are about enhancing health outcomes, and that they are research-based in both their decisions around admissions and also the curriculum and how it gets delivered and the outcomes that come from that. And so attributes are a part of the calculation because we know from research that when the attributes of the physician match those of the patient, outcomes are better. That is to say, though, that like all holistic factors, these are just one of many factors considered. And in my experience as an admissions dean, I can tell you that when applicants can connect the nature of their demographics with their why in a way that's compelling and powerful and demonstrates a meaningful connection to medicine in general, and specifically serving within certain specialties and or serving certain populations, that's when our ears get really peaked up to say, this is somebody that seems like they have a compelling why that connects to a pressing health need in our nation, in our state, or our local communities. So that's how at least I've seen it articulated within an admissions process. Either one of our panelists wish to comment on that?
I can jump in really well said. With that, we list our attributes right on our website. We don't even hide it. And for us, and we do the multiple mini interviews. So you're coming in for 2 hours. We actually do on-campus interviews, and you're with us for 2 hours doing 10 stations. And you can probably put a quick guess, that those attributes are going to be part of those questions. And so again, there's a roadmap for you. But I love how you're stating how each of us has this mission. We shared them at the beginning because we show you how important it is. That's helping you find that match. And your background, I think you should own that background. The language, if you should own that language, the communities you want to serve, if you do, share them with us. It'll just show that better fit again. And I think that's what we're all seeking.
All right, so we'll transition now to the next myth, which is, if I know that I want to go to medical school, I should go straight out of college.
Yes, so I know that for people who tend to be pretty driven, and if you know what you want to do, you want to just start doing it right away. And I just think that there's a lot that gets lost if you just have your eye on the prize the whole time. We find that students who have taken a year or more to do other things outside of school before starting medical school are more successful in our admissions process, but also more successful in medical school as well. I think part of it is maturity, but part of it is also experiencing and interacting with different people. So we really like when students have had more time than coming straight out of college. In fact, only about 12% of our incoming first-year class came straight from college to medical school. The vast majority have had 1 or more years of experience outside of college. And even some of our, I was talking with some colleagues and their schools were similar, but maybe 20% came straight out of college. So not the majority, which I think is a little bit surprising.
Yeah, we're there. 86% took a gap year. And with that, also 38% of this most recent class were reapplicants. And so we were talking about that drive, determination, grit as well. If you don't get in that first year, like I said, 2 out of 5 are getting in, to have that kind of determination, to be able to continue to get those experiences while you're in this application system, and then to show again our admissions committee loves the reapplicant because it just shows that these guys will not be stopped. And so it's something to consider as well.
I think both of your comments affirm the holistic aspect, which is we're looking for a rich array of experiences. And oftentimes students use a gap year to enrich those experiences, which then enriches their why. And it also enriches our confidence that their why is suiting our particular mission. Moving on to the next open myth. As long as I have some medical exposure a few months before applying, that will be enough. So what I'll add there is to say it's certainly a myth. And in fact, if we see that we have an applicant who sought their exposure, medical exposure, just a few months before, that would cause us to question their true commitment. And we would also want to question their why a bit in terms of why do they want medicine when their first experiences that have any health-oriented content occurred a few months before applying. So we like to see a sustained engagement in activities. And we like to see applicants who can communicate how a sustained set of activities enrich their understanding of their why.
Absolutely.
Now, that said, we also recognize, again, that different students have different access to opportunities. And so if you are under the belief that the way to get into medical school is to get perfect grades and test scores and to don't forget to get 40 hours of shadowing in, that is not the algorithm anymore. We are looking for an array of experiences that for some people may not even seem like they articulate with a career in medicine, but for that person and their story, it does articulate, and they provide a very compelling rationale for it. So I will share that I had a medical school applicant once who became a fantastic student and graduate of medical school, where their experience was working as an auto mechanic for about 20 years. And this particular student communicated in the application that as an auto mechanic, he learned how vital transportation is to people and their daily lives. And then he told stories about how as a mechanic, he would provide free services to clients when he saw they were facing disproportionate need. And a common need that he saw was that they weren't getting access to health and wellness care services because of transportation problems. And his dream as a physician was to have his medical practice adjacent to an auto mechanic shop. Now, that's a unique story. I've only heard it once. It was very compelling, and he's gone on to be a graduate who's lived that mission. So there's an example. Would anybody else like to comment on this?
Just a fabulous story. And again, that's that one you wouldn't typically see, but that person owned it. And it really, it showed the passion of what and who they were going to serve and how they could serve. I think that's fantastic.
I agree.
All right, so our last one that we have prepared is medical schools evaluate anticipated and completed hours the same. Who would like to take that one?
Carrie, it's yours.
Thanks. Yeah, so the committee likes to see that you've done the things that you said that you've done. And they don't, and even though people have great intentions and they plan to do things, life happens, things happen, and sometimes they don't get done. And if that happens to be your major medical exposure, they're going to worry about that. So they aren't evaluated the same.
Agreed.
Agreed. All right, so now we're going to transition to our Q&A, and I'm just going to go in order by which we received them, and I'm going to try to combine a few questions and comments together. There's one theme in the questions and comments, which is around getting poor academic metrics earlier in their academic career and then effectively improving over time. So whether it's improving within the undergrad years or it's improving in a post-bac or a master's program. And the basic question is, how as admissions committees do you evaluate not only the overall performance, but the trajectory of performance?
I could start. I mean, and again, I'll speak for our medical school, our admissions committee, and maybe try and take it a little bit more national with you guys. But yes, we look at trends. But again, it could tie back to stories. So you could see a really good, strong, freshman and sophomore GPA, and then this drop off on a junior year, and then a pick up again on the senior year. And then all of a sudden you're reading the secondaries, and you found out that they had to come back and take care of family during their junior year, and their mom or dad had a health issue or something that really had an impact on their life. Story explained. Had a tougher undergrad, GPA. They're trying to find their way, trying to find their path. The call to medicine is a little bit later. Absolutely fine. They go and tackle a tough master's and show the equivalency that they can handle this kind of curriculum. Absolutely fine. So we look for the trends. Multiple MCATs and a higher score than a lower score. I mean, the committee could talk about it, but again, if you could relate it back to your story and what that story and that journey and how that impacted you, we're comfortable with that. We look for it, but then we also just want you guys to help us to understand it.
Carrie?
I would 100% agree with that. Definitely, if it's a lower in the beginning and looking for an upward trajectory, and again, you can supplement with postbacks and masters, or just demonstrating that you can handle the material. But again, as Dr. Fogarty said, there's lots of ways that you can put what happened in context for the committee. That's what they need to know, the why behind it.
And I would just add that I think admissions committees have really leaned into this notion of trajectory more so as a consequence of the pandemic, and having many students during that time have to pivot from largely in-person to online learning. And so I think what I'm hearing from our panelists, and I would agree with clearly, is if you're a student who's had, let's just say for whatever reason, an uneven academic pathway in terms of performance, it's one thing for that to be factually true, but what separates applicants oftentimes is how they explain or otherwise articulate that unevenness. Those that are silent on it are probably less advantaged than those who have a real demonstrated, convincing explanation for the unevenness in their performance. So there's a number of questions around the admissions process and timing. So for example, one of them is, I have been hearing that applicants should, quote, give up most hope if they do not have an interview invite by the Thanksgiving, Christmas time. Is this true? Alternatively, is there a certain time where applicants should begin worrying?
I got a thought, but Carrie, you could jump in there.
All right, I'll just say that we have rolling admissions, so we're making interview offers through February. So for us, that would not be a red flag, and I'm sure it differs for each medical school. You can always reach out and let people know that you're still there, and sometimes that helps. I don't know, but we have rolling admissions, so we're constantly making offers.
And I usually try and explain it to the applications are open in for you guys in May, and then we're getting them at the end of the June. We come back from the July 4th weekend, and we got 3,000, 4,000 apps, and all of a sudden we have to process all the way through. And for us, we go through our applicant season through mid-March, and same thing, we ensure that there are seats available all the way through the season. So even if we get the applications, and that's another myth that maybe is out there we can talk about real quick, applying really late into the season, your application will still be considered. There is still room for that consideration. I have heard, in the last couple of weeks, if someone's applying, the admissions committee will, say, were they really serious about us? And I'll try and slap their hand and just say it's full consideration. So I don't know if you have to apply the very first day, but in that summer season, I think it's good to get the applications out there that you want, to get those secondaries filled out. Don't be in too much of a hurry on those secondaries. That take a day or two to really, again, do your homework, understand those schools, really put those connection points, why that school. If you're able to go to a medical school, get a tour, talk to one of their students, and you get to apply in a present tense. So if you ever have that kind of ability, you're going on vacation to LA, you're interested in California schools, maybe you pop in a couple of schools. You see someone with a short white coat, tackle them, just say hi to them. And next thing you know, I've met your school, I've been on your campus, but then you see that connectivity. I think that's what we're really seeking all the way through. But for seats, absolutely, we have them all the way through the season, and we ensure that we are considering applicants all the way through the season as well.
As a follow-on, when do you tend to have your final batch of interviews?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we start early. We're in August and we go through mid-March for our season.
That's the same with when I was in admissions dean. It was probably latter part of March.
Yeah.
We stop early March.
Okay. So there it is. There is sort of an end date, but it's much later than the Christmas, the December to November time period. All right, another general question I'm seeing is about, are there categorical aspects of an application that cause you to say no? And one of the examples that's offered in one of the comments is the example of a DUI, driving under the influence. Does this cause someone to categorically not get an opportunity for an interview?
I can start, and then Carrie, you can jump in. The answer for a DUI is no. Alcohol overall. We look at time and distance when we're reviewing these, and then how did that impact your life, and what have you done to adjust that? Fabulous person, thank you, from California. I remember him well. DUI early, and he ended up building these education programs, and he ended up becoming a leader in that area. And my gosh, the committee was so excited about seeing that kind of drive to learn from a life mistake and then have an impact on other people's lives. So for us, time and distance, a felony is a little tougher. All those do come to my desk. And the chair and I do have a conversation with those. Those are a little bit more difficult because then you're trying to think of whether they could get into residency programs. So that might be a heavier lift conversation that we've had in the past. But the DUIs, in the wrong place, wrong time during undergraduate parties, those hit our desk quite often. But we like to learn how you've learned from them.
I agree with Glenn's answer. Carrie?
Yeah, I agree also. And it's also about how you write about it too. Like, are you taking responsibility? Are you just saying, oh, it was somebody else's fault? That kind of thing would be a red flag. But as long as somebody, people make mistakes, and if you learn from them, that's great. That's what we're looking for.
So for the attendees, I see that a couple people raised their hand. We're not going to be able to take your questions directly through raising the hand. So please put your questions in the chat. I will also make a comment that we've received 137 questions, comments. So we're not going to possibly be able to address them all. And we apologize for those of you who asked questions that which we haven't been able to answer, and we won't be able to answer entirely. That said, we are recording this session, and we will be using your questions to inform our practices. So one way or another, what you've posed will benefit us and other applicants. So moving on, one comment is, if one doesn't entirely know their why, should medical application be delayed? And my answer to that is, a lifetime of experience is about trying to know your why. And just when you think you know it, it changes again. And so therefore, just recognize that none of us are ever probably going to know our why wholly or fully. And if we thought we did, it changed the next minute. So you don't need to delay your medical school application because you don't entirely know it, because you probably never will. And if you do, call me up because I'd love to get the wisdom. So I'm just going to go on to the next one then. So just give me 1 second to scan.
We'll do speed answering now, right?
Exactly. Hold on.
Yeah, I like how you said it too, when you were just talking about the journey. If someone can articulate where they are in their personal journey at that time, is still a positive for us as well.
So I thank you for that, Glenn. I found a very powerful one that I'd like to share with you. How does your school's values toward diversity, equity, and inclusion mesh with the current political climate of your individual state? For example, as a transgender student, I'm very concerned about schools in locations where the politics are seemingly unfriendly toward us, making us very hesitant to apply. How do schools ensure student safety?
Gary, you start and I'll jump in.
Sure, that's a really powerful question. I think it's something that you really need to consider because you want to be safe. For Vermont, it's a very liberal state. It's very open to LGBTQ issues and students and transgender issues, as well as liberal issues. So I think that for us, we feel that the values of the state align with our values as a medical school.
And I could jump in because thank you. We have a very conservative state, and we do try and stay out of that political environment. But I know it's a question I need to answer multiple times as people consider our state, and I'm comfortable that people have different views as they walk in. But we are extremely supportive as a medical community to find students that want to serve in our community, and we do have every walk of life inside the state of Arizona. So if someone does come, we do everything we can to connect them, with a student with the same comfort level, the same kind of walk of life, or where they are at that stage. We've had students, have change of life decisions here that have been impactful. We want to help walk that journey with them. So even I think, any state, whether it's liberal or if it's conservative, I think really understand the community, that medical community walking in, see if people are, following that same walk, that same path, that same journey. Ask for those connection points so you could feel comfortable going there and knowing that you have a safe environment, a welcoming environment, one that you could come in and have an impact on broader. We certainly are trying to do that we're right in the state capital in Phoenix, and so the capital is 7 blocks away, and we have a great advocacy program. So even though we are conservative, and again, we're comfortable for both sides of that student coming in and being representation for us, just find the ones and just ask the question. And I think you will find the one that's the right fit and the comfort level for you. Eric, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I do. I first of all agree with what Glenn and Gary shared. I would just add that this is a place where I believe the medical school mission is very powerful and important. As we know, the political winds can shift one way or another over time. And we know that those shifts can have profound effects on certain groups in certain places and times. That said, medical school missions tend to be more durable. They tend not to shift in the ways that the political winds shift.
That's well said.
And I will say that in general, medical school missions are squarely focused on the health of the communities they serve, whoever that represents. And so while you might find that the culture and climate of a particular medical school is more conservative or more liberal, I would say in general, medical schools are focused on serving the health of their population, whoever that population is, and they tend not to shift nearly as fast, gratefully, as the political winds have shifted recently.
Well said.
Okay, keeping going. It's very challenging, by the way, to respond and also find questions at the same time. So forgive me. We only
You're
have
talented, my friend.
And only a few minutes left. Okay. This is an interesting one. So what if pursuing that passion or your why negatively impacts the quality of grades? Do you look beyond this one?
Carrie, you're shaking. Yeah, you go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I think, yes. I mean, again, we keep saying this, but, explaining that to us is helpful, and, making sure that the committee understands what has happened, how it has impacted you. We talk a lot about people being able to reflect in our process and in our school, in our curriculum, because we know that physicians who are able to reflect, and by reflect, we mean a very specific thing, which is not only what happened, but how did that impact you? How did it impact the people that you were working with? And so being able to do that is something that we look for in our application. We look for it in our secondary, and we look for it in our students. So I think, having that capability is an important factor, and explaining how things impacted you and why goes a very long way for making the committee understand what the context was.
Well said.
So this is a question again about the why of the person, the applicant. Where is the best place to explain that why in the application?
I mean, for me, I would start all the way back to that personal statement. I think that's a fantastic opportunity. The secondaries with, you're going to get that first level at the personal statement. We could be seeing it inside your letters of recommendation. We're making that decision to invite you to campus through your answers in your secondary. So we see those things because interconnected in there. And then your interview, whatever path of interview or type of interview you have, I think that's the excellent way for you to show that connectivity, what your passions are. Again, you've already done your homework. You're, on average, we're applying to 18 medical schools across the country. So you pick out your 20 and 16 invites you to secondaries. You found 16 that you believe are the right fit. And then that's when you have these conversations and we make that determination whether it is the right fit for both of us. And as I always say, when we're interviewing you, you are also interviewing us. And all that time we're trying to make that decision. And if you get multiple acceptances, lucky enough to do that, we actually celebrate it with you because it means you get to make an informed decision and truly go to where you want to be. Quick answer there.
Thank you. So another question that kind of gets back to the topic of diversity is, and I've scanned past it, but I know what it basically said, which is that when a student is not considered, when they don't identify themselves as an underrepresented minority, how do they articulate diversity in a way that's resonant with medical school admissions committees? And I will start by saying that demographics alone are not the sole and most powerful defining feature for me in an application. What's important and powerful relative to underrepresentation is how that translates into what they've done in their life story that impacts the broader lives of underrepresented and marginalized populations. So I believe that anybody from any demographic characteristic can be not just a stated, but a demonstrated champion for marginalized and underrepresented communities. And I've seen it in all walks of life. I've seen students who come from very affluent backgrounds who have dedicated the lion's share of their free time to serving in underserved populations. I've also seen folks from underrepresented backgrounds who faced challenges in their life to the point that they didn't have time to do that kind of service. They had to work to feed their family. So it gets manifested in a number of ways. And unfortunately, I think in some of the dialogue that happens out there in the land of myths, people think this is solely and only about demographic characteristics. It's not. It's about what you've done in your life to serve those who are underserved fundamentally, and how you add up to being a physician who will dedicate their careers to something similar.
Fantastic last words. Tie it all the way back together. So
with that said, I wish to thank our panelists, Glenn Fogarty and Carrie Jukes, for your wonderful remarks, your very insightful comments, and perhaps most importantly, for busting a ton of myths. I hope that the folks on the call feel more empowered and ready to make important and powerful choices in where you apply to medical school, and then if you get interview offers and seat offers, where you ultimately choose to participate. We appreciate the questions and the comments from all of the attendees, and we wish you all the best as you continue to explore a career in medicine. So thank you all so much.
bye all.
Thank you.